Who doesn't love a little lightning? Humans have wondered about the ways it could harness the power of the mysterious sparks from the sky for centuries, and thanks to the work of a Serbian-American genius, the modern world is able to do so in ways that were unheard of back when we were dangling keys on kite strings. Perhaps the greatest inventor of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Nikola Tesla was a man of many talents, but being either wholly or partially responsible for the creation of stuff like the use of alternating current as a method of power transmission, neon lamps, the X-ray, remote control, and the Tesla coil, among others. The impact his work has had on modern society is impressive, shaping the ways that we see the world decades after his passing in 1943. While the world has become quite familiar with Tesla's inventions, understanding the man behind them has proven to be a more daunting task due to the life he lived and the time in which he lived it. It seems as if he was as enigmatic as he was intelligent. Indeed, the popular notion of Tesla being a mad scientist has largely stemmed from a lack of understanding of the way his brain worked. Which poses the question, what was the exact source of Tesla's esoteric behavior? Were there any psychological disorders known today that Tesla displayed behaviors of, and is it possible that he could have suffered from one of them? The results may or may not be shocking. One potential source for Tesla's idiosyncrasies may have been obsessive-compulsive disorder, an anxiety disorder that is characterized by unwanted, persistent thoughts and irresistible impulses to perform a ritual to relieve those thoughts. Tesla was documented as being a highly ritualistic man in general. His gravitation toward the number 3 and its multiples would lead him to walk around a building's surrounding block 3 times before entering. In his later years, he made a habit of feeding the pigeons of New York's parks, with one particular injured bird who he spent $2,000 of his own money on to nurse back to health and, in his words, fell in love with as a woman loves a man. Beyond that, though, Tesla also had fervent, debilitating fears of germs and pearls. He would visit the same restaurant nightly and requested 18 napkins to clean his silverware and plates before eating, and always wore white gloves in order to combat the former, and the latter affected him to the point where he was unable to socialize with women who wore them. The degree to which these fears and ritualistic behaviors affected Tesla's functioning provides a solid framework for a diagnosis of OCD. Another possibility may have been that Tesla had autism spectrum disorder, a developmental disorder characterized by restrictive, repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities, and persistent deficits in social communications and social interaction among multiple contexts. Tesla displayed a number of these characteristics, living an extremely ritualistic life, developing heavy investments in the things that fascinated him, and being unusually reserved. It is worth noting that for all 86 years of his life, Tesla was celibate, a prevalent trait, voluntary or otherwise, within the autistic community. Perhaps the most substantial evidence, however, could be found from Tesla's description of the methods he came up with as ideas for inventions in an 1899 interview, in which he states, "To my delight, I found I could visualize with the greatest facility. I needed no models, drawings, or experiments. I could picture them all in my mind." This ability corresponds to a similar phenomenon cited by Dr. Temple Grandin, an activist with ASD and a public speaker on the disorder who stated in 2006 that visual thinking has enabled her to build entire systems in her imagination. Finally, it is possible that some of Tesla's unorthodox behaviors came about simply as an end result of the environments he grew up, worked, and lived in. His reclusiveness hit its peak in its later years, which could have come about due to the hardships he'd fallen on after initial success with the invention of alternating current with the assistance of fellow inventor and businessman George Westinghouse. Tesla found himself discredited for the creation of radio due to a patent dispute with Guglielmo Marconi and his company, despondent due to the libelous nature of Thomas Edison's campaigns against his work, and dejected after the failure of his ambitious Wardenclyffe Tower project, which would have served as his attempt at wireless power transmission, providing solid reasoning to shun society for the disgraced inventor. His earlier neurotic iniquities may have taken root in his late adolescence. Tesla contracted cholera at 17 years old, and his father, who up to that point insisted that he become a priest, promised him that he could go to engineering school if he survived. The subsequent germophobic traits Tesla displayed may have been the manifestation of a deep desire to protect himself and his lifestyle from the threats he had to face as a teenager. Evaluating all of the evidence presented has made obsessive-compulsive disorder the most likely diagnosis to be found, as Tesla displayed almost all of the necessary symptoms. While he had a number of traits that correspond to those found in people who have autism spectrum disorders today, it is hard to conclude that he had it because of scant evidence to prove that he had developmental trouble as a child due to the disorder, which is the primary method of diagnosis. It is likely that the environmental factors I mentioned had some role in Tesla's mental state at various periods, but the chances of them being the source of all of his less common behavior is slim to none. Hopefully the results didn't leave you thunderstruck. Thank you for watching. It's kind of interesting. Doves and pigeons are actually quite closely related.